When you think of the Cold War, you probably picture two giant, unmoving blocks locked in a global stare-down, right? But the truth is, it was way more complicated. Inside these big alliances, some relationships were built on just incredible trust, while others were all about risky, constant defiance. So let's dig into how those different loyalties really shaped the world. And that really gets to the core question we're tackling today. In the Cold War, did everybody on the same team actually play by the same rules? As we're about to see, the answer is a big, resounding no. To get a handle on this, we're going to look at two totally fascinating case studies. On one side, you've got the US and the UK, the heart of the Western Bloc. Their special relationship was all about insane levels of cooperation. And then you've got Romania, the absolute wild card of the Eastern Bloc, a country that was technically on the team, but pretty much defined by its fierce, almost reckless independence from Moscow. Okay, so to really unpack these two different stories, we have to start with the very structure of their alliances. Because honestly, the way NATO and the Warsaw Pact were run tells you everything you need to know about the freedom or, the total lack of freedom their members had. Romania's entire strategy can basically be boiled down to one word: desatellization. Now, this wasn't about them officially quitting the Warsaw Pact. It was way more clever. It was about hollowing out Moscow's influence from the inside out, getting real independence while still holding on to that membership card. A real political high-wire act. And why was it such a high-wire act? Because of this. Intra-block policing. This was the Warsaw Pact's, brutal enforcement policy. If you stepped too far out of line, the alliance wouldn't just kick you out, it might just send in tanks to crush you. That's exactly what happened in Czechoslovakia in 1968. This was the threat Romania was staring down every single day. And you can see the fundamental difference right here. It's night and day. In NATO, big decisions were made by consensus. If a country like France wasn't happy, it could just leave the military command structure. No invasion, no panic. But in the Warsaw Pact, decisions were directives, straight from Moscow. Dissent wasn't just frowned upon, it was crushed. Which leads to this absolutely incredible conclusion, perfectly captured in this quote. Even with the constant threat of invasion, Romania managed to carve out so much autonomy for itself that its position was actually comparable to France's in the much, much freer NATO alliance. I mean, that is just an astonishing diplomatic achievement. All right, now let's see how this all played out in the military world, because this is where the contrast gets even sharper. It's really a story of deep, deep trust on one side versus a stubborn push for total self-reliance on the other. So on one hand, you have the US and UK so integrated they were sharing top-level intelligence through the Five Eyes Agreement and even developing nuclear weapons systems together. Meanwhile, Romania was doing the complete opposite, kicking out all foreign troops, stripping Soviet ideology from its army, and cooking up its own defense plan based on a people's war. And it gets even bolder. Romania just flat-out refused to let the Warsaw Pact hold military exercises on its soil. Can you imagine the nerve? And not only that, but it started opening up its own military relationships with countries in the rival NATO alliance. This was just unheard of in the Eastern Bloc. This independence streak, of course, flowed right into the world of economics. Money and trade became a key battleground, a tool for control for the Soviets, and a really powerful tool for rebellion for the Romanians. The Western allies built this whole integrated economic system, the IMF, the World Bank, all designed to create prosperous, interconnected, anti-communist countries. Romania looked at this and decided to use its own assets, like oil and grain, to pivot. It ended up being the only Warsaw Pact member to join the IMF and the World Bank. By the early 70s, it was doing most of its trading outside the communist world. And the US was actively encouraging this. They had a specific policy for it, actually, called differentiation. The idea was pretty simple: find the cracks in the Eastern Bloc and then use economic goodies to pry them even wider. It was a strategy basically designed to encourage a little bit of communist heresy. So the playbook was pretty straightforward. Step 1, identify the rebels, like Romania. Step 2, reward them with special trade deals that make their independence profitable. And step 3, just kind of sit back and watch as this starts to weaken Moscow's grip on its empire from the inside. And for the US, there was a huge strategic win here. Romania wasn't just a pain for the Soviets, it was a useful one. Because of its unique position, it could act as a secret back channel for the US to talk to countries like China and North Vietnam. That made it a real favorite of American foreign policy. So, we've got two completely different ways of being an ally. How did it all turn out? Well, in this last section, we're going to see how these two very different paths led to dramatically different endings when the Cold War finally came to a close. This timeline really just lays out these stark contrasts. While the Thatcher-Reagan partnership was applying maximum pressure and Gorbachev was trying to reform the system, most of the Eastern Bloc transitioned peacefully in 1989, but not Romania. Its end was sudden, chaotic, and it was the only violent revolution of the bunch. So why the violence? It really came down to this. The same fierce independence that defined Romania's foreign policy led its leader, Nicolae Ceausescu, to become the only guy in the Eastern Bloc to openly fight Gorbachev's reforms. He just refused to bend, and so the system didn't reform, it shattered. But it's also really important to remember the bigger picture. While Western policies like differentiation were clever, the Soviet system didn't fall apart because of one single strategy. At the end of the day, it collapsed because it fundamentally failed to provide for its own people. Which leaves us with one final big question to think about: Romania's path of fierce independence. It brought them leverage, trade, and prestige, but it also ended in violence and isolation. It really makes you wonder, in a world of giants, what's the true price you pay for going it alone?